My name is Patricia Monroe. I'm 57 years old. At 11:34 on a gray Saturday morning in November, my sister stood at the pulpit in St. Andrew's Chapel, placed one manicured hand over her heart, and told 112 mourners that caring for our dying father had been the hardest privilege of her life. I was sitting in the front pew with my hands folded around a damp tissue I had not used yet, not because I was not grieving, because I had already cried in the shower at 5 that morning, beside the hospice bed at 2 in the morning 3 nights earlier, in the pharmacy parking lot in October, over a bowl of cold soup in September, and into my father's old flannel shirt, the night he forgot my name but still reached for my hand. My sister Denise dabbed the corner of her eye with a lace handkerchief that matched her black dress. She had chosen a dress with a fitted waist, soft sleeves, and just enough elegance to photograph well without seeming disrespectful. Her hair was curled, her earrings were pearls, her voice trembled in all the right places. "Dad taught me what love looks like," she said, looking out at the room. "And these past months, I learned what it means to show up when someone needs you most." A murmur moved through the chapel. People nodded. Of course they did. They had seen Denise's posts. They had seen the filtered photos of her holding Dad's hand, the captions about grief, the candle emojis, the updates written in that soft public language people use when they want sympathy without obligation. They had commented things like, "You are such a devoted daughter, and he is blessed to have you. And take care of yourself too, Denise. Take care of yourself too." I almost laughed when I first read that one, at 3:40 in the morning, while changing Dad's sheets after his catheter leaked, and Denise was probably asleep in her own bed 40 minutes away. But at the funeral, no one knew that. They did not know I had moved into Dad's house for the last 7 months of his life. They did not know I had handled medication schedules, hospice calls, bathing, wound care, oxygen tubing, doctor updates, insurance forms, grocery deliveries, laundry, panic, confusion, pain, and the slow breaking of a man who had once carried me on his shoulders through county fairs. They did not know Denise visited for photographs. They did not know she once asked me to straighten Dad's blanket before she took a picture for Facebook. They did not know she posted, "Dad had a peaceful night," on a morning after I had been awake for 8 hours while he begged to go home from the home he was already in. They only knew the story she told them, and now she was standing over our father's casket, turning my labor into her legacy. Denise looked down at the program. "There were nights," she said, voice breaking beautifully, "when I sat beside him and prayed for strength." My jaw tightened. There were nights. She had spent exactly 2 nights at Dad's house in 7 months. One was after I had the flu and could barely stand. The other was after her friends from church asked why she was not staying more often, and she wanted to be able to say she had. Both nights, she slept in the guest room with a lavender eye mask and asked me in the morning if Dad always made those little noises when he breathed. I stared at my father's casket. Dark wood. White lilies. His folded flag from his Navy service placed on a small stand nearby. My father, Harold Monroe, had been 82 when he died. He was not perfect. He was stubborn, proud, emotionally awkward, and allergic to asking for help. But he loved us. He taught me to check tire pressure, balance a checkbook, plant tomatoes deep, and never trust a person who would not look a waitress in the eye. He deserved truth at his funeral, not performance. Denise continued, "I know Dad is looking down today, grateful that his daughters came together to honor him." His daughters, plural. For once, she included me because it made the sentence prettier. Then she turned slightly toward the casket, placed her hand on the wood, and whispered loudly enough for the microphone to catch, "I hope I made you proud, Daddy." A woman behind me sniffled. My cousin Linda squeezed my shoulder, and then, from the side aisle, a quiet voice said, "Patricia made him comfortable." Not loud, not dramatic, not angry, just clear. Everyone turned. Marianne Cooper, Dad's hospice nurse, stood near the front row in her navy coat, holding the funeral program in both hands. She was 60, maybe 61, with silver hair pulled back, tired eyes, and the kind of calm that comes from sitting with hundreds of families at the edge of death. She had not planned to speak. She had come to pay respects after finishing a morning visit with another patient. Denise froze at the pulpit. Marianne looked at her, then at me. Then she said, "I'm sorry, but Harold asked me to make sure the truth was not lost." The chapel went completely still. Denise's hand tightened around the microphone. "What?" she whispered. Marianne stepped forward one pace. "Your father knew who was there." My sister's face drained of color. I looked down at my hands. Inside my purse, folded in a sealed envelope, was a letter Dad had dictated to Marianne 2 weeks before he died, on one of his last clear mornings. I had not planned to read it. I had not planned to expose Denise. I had planned to bury my father with dignity and let my sister keep her public applause, because grief had already taken enough from me. But Dad had planned better. What Denise did not know was that hospice records showed every visit, every caregiver note, every medication log, every overnight call, and every family member present. What she did not know was that Marianne had watched me disappear into service while my sister appeared online in carefully timed photos. What no one in the chapel knew was that Dad, even as his body failed, had asked Marianne to document one final truth. Patricia was the one who stayed. And what my sister absolutely did not know was that her funeral speech about sacrifice had just opened the door for the only witness who could correct it without sounding bitter. This is that story. Before I tell you how my sister learned that social media sympathy is not the same as hospice care, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment someone took credit for the quiet work they left you to do. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, erased, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not interrupt the speech. Some women let the nurse do it. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in a white ranch house with green shutters, a narrow hallway, and a backyard where my father planted tomatoes every spring, even when my mother said nobody needed that many tomatoes. My father, Harold Monroe, worked as an electrician for 38 years. He had large hands, a stiff back, and a habit of carrying a pencil behind his ear long after retirement. He was not the kind of man who said "I love you" easily. He showed love by checking your oil, sharpening your kitchen knives, fixing a loose stair tread, or quietly slipping $20 into your coat pocket when you insisted you were fine. My mother, Elaine, was softer in public and sharper at home. She ran the church nursery, baked lemon bars for every funeral, and believed family issues should be handled privately, even when private handling meant the responsible person carried everything. There were 2 daughters. I was the older one, Patricia. Practical, serious, dependable, the child who could be trusted with house keys, grocery lists, and other people's feelings. Denise was 4 years younger, pretty, dramatic, and gifted at making people lean toward her when she cried. She was not evil. I want to say that clearly. She was not born with a plan to become selfish. She was trained by a family that rewarded her emotions and relied on mine. If Denise was upset, the room stopped. If I was upset, someone asked me to help calm Denise. At 10, Denise cried because she did not get the solo in the Christmas pageant. My mother took her shopping for a new dress to cheer her up. I got the solo, but I learned to sing it quietly because the house had already chosen whose feelings mattered. At 16, Denise borrowed my car without asking and dented the bumper. Dad made her apologize, but I was the one who had to drive the car with the dent for 6 months, because insurance would raise the rates if we filed a claim. At 24, Denise dropped out of college mid-semester and came home crying about pressure. Mom said she needed grace. When I took 6 years to finish night classes while working full-time, everyone said they admired my discipline, which is what people say when they have no intention of helping. I became a medical records supervisor at a regional clinic. I built a quiet life, one marriage, then a divorce after 12 years when my husband decided finding himself required a woman from his cycling group and half our savings. No children, not by choice at first, then by acceptance later. I bought a townhouse, worked, volunteered at the library, visited my parents every Sunday, and learned that a peaceful life can still be full even when other people call it small. Denise married twice, divorced twice, and collected sympathy the way some people collect antique glass. She had one daughter, Erin, now 22, who was kinder than her mother and embarrassed by her sometimes, though too loyal to say it out loud. The symbolic object in this story was Dad's pocket watch. It had belonged to his father, a railroad mechanic, and Dad kept it in the top drawer of his nightstand in a faded brown case. He did not carry it often. It was too valuable emotionally and too impractical physically. But every Sunday after dinner, when he wanted to talk about something without looking like he wanted to talk, he would take the watch out, wind it, and tell a story. The watch had a tiny scratch on the back from when Grandpa dropped it in 1959. Dad said he liked the scratch because it proved something could keep time after damage. When Mom died 6 years before Dad, the house changed. Dad became smaller inside it. He still planted tomatoes, still watched baseball, still grumbled about the price of coffee. But the rooms had lost their interpreter. Mom had translated him for decades. Without her, his love came out in awkward fragments. You check your tires? You eating enough? Your furnace working? That meant I miss you. I went every Sunday. Denise went when she needed something, or when guilt had built up enough to post about. After Mom died, Denise began calling Dad my rock online. She posted old photos of them with captions like, "This man has always been my safe place." Dad did not use social media, which was fortunate because he would have hated being turned into scenery for public feelings. But he still loved her. That was the painful part. He loved Denise with the weary patience of a father who knew his younger daughter would always arrive late, cry first, and leave before dishes. He loved me with trust so complete it sometimes felt invisible. When Dad was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, kidney disease, and later a likely cancer they decided not to aggressively treat because his body was too tired, the family meeting happened in his living room. Dad sat in his recliner with a plaid blanket over his legs. Denise sat beside him, holding his hand and crying. I sat at the coffee table with a notebook, medication list, and the discharge summary. The palliative care nurse explained that Dad wanted to remain at home as long as possible. He would need help with medications, meals, mobility, bathing, appointments, and eventually hospice. Denise sobbed. I can't lose him. Dad patted her hand. Not gone yet, sweetheart. I asked practical questions. How often would home health come? What symptoms required a call? What equipment would insurance cover? Could we get a hospital bed when needed? What medications should be stopped? Denise later told a cousin I was very clinical during the meeting. Clinical. That was her word for the person making sure Dad had oxygen. After the nurse left, I said, we need a schedule. Denise nodded, wiping her eyes. Absolutely. We'll do this together. Together. A beautiful word until you measure it. For the first month, Denise came on Tuesdays for 2 hours and Sundays, if brunch did not run long. She brought soup once, flowers twice, and a ring light, because she said Dad's room was too dim for video calls with relatives. I came every weekday after work and stayed most weekends. Then Dad fell in the bathroom. After that, I moved into the guest room, temporarily. Temporary became 7 months. I told myself it made sense. My townhouse was 20 minutes away. My job allowed partial remote work after I explained the situation. Denise lived 40 minutes away and said driving at night triggered anxiety. Aaron was in college. Denise had, quote, a lot of emotional load. I had fewer visible reasons to be unavailable. That is how caregiving traps people. It does not always arrive as a demand. Sometimes it arrives as the absence of anyone else stepping forward. Dad resisted help at first. I can wash myself, he snapped the first time I tried to help him bathe. I know you can, I said. I'm here in case the floor decides to be rude. He almost smiled. That became our language, dignity disguised as jokes. I learned how to help him transfer from bed to chair, how to crush pills into applesauce when swallowing became hard, how to track fluid intake, how to recognize the difference between pain, fear, confusion, and pride, how to change sheets with a person still in the bed, how to speak to hospice nurses without making Dad feel like a project. Denise learned which angles made him look most peaceful in photographs. Her first viral post came in May. Dad was asleep in his recliner, sunlight on his face, my folded laundry basket visible in the corner because I had been doing his sheets. Denise took a photo, cropped out the basket, softened the lighting, and posted, "Spending precious time with Dad today. Caregiving is heartbreaking and holy. Please pray for strength." 312 reactions, 86 comments. Someone wrote, "You are an angel daughter." I was in the kitchen, washing the blender I used to make Dad's soup smooth enough to swallow. Denise came in holding her phone. "People are being so sweet." I looked at the screen. "You should take the post down." Her smile faded. "Why?" "He was sleeping." "He looked peaceful." "He didn't consent." "Patricia, he barely knows what day it is." "That makes consent more important, not less." She rolled her eyes. "I'm sharing the journey. It helps me cope." I looked at her carefully. "Are you sharing the journey or borrowing it?" She stared at me. "That is such a cruel thing to say." Then she left early because I had made the atmosphere hostile. Dad woke up an hour later and asked where she went. I said she had to get home. He nodded, disappointed but unsurprised. The hospice nurse, Marianne Cooper, started coming in June. Marianne had the kind of presence that made a room exhale. She did not rush. She did not talk too loudly. She addressed Dad first, even when he was confused. She washed her hands thoroughly, checked his skin, adjusted medication, asked me when I last slept, and did not accept "I'm fine" as a medical answer. The first week, she looked at me over Dad's chart and said, "You are the primary caregiver?" I hesitated. "My sister helps." Marianne waited. I sighed. "Yes, I'm the primary caregiver. Do you have scheduled respite?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because the words sounded luxurious. "No." She wrote something down. "You need respite?" "I need my sister to answer texts." Marianne looked at me. "That too." From then on, Marianne became the only person who consistently saw what was happening. She saw me sleeping in the recliner beside Dad's bed. She saw the medication chart in my handwriting. She saw the cracked skin on my hands from washing linens. She saw Denise arrive with coffee, take a photo, and leave before wound care. She saw Dad calm when I spoke. She saw him become anxious after Denise cried loudly at his bedside and said, "I don't know how I'll live without you, Daddy," while he stared at the ceiling, frightened by her fear. One afternoon, after Denise left, Dad whispered, "Is she okay?" I adjusted his blanket. She sad. He closed his eyes. Always was. That was all he said. By July, Denise's posts had become a second illness in the house. She wrote long updates about our hospice journey, though she was rarely there when hospice came. She posted a photo of Dad's hand in hers with the caption, "Holding the hand that held mine through every storm." What the photo did not show was that I had just trimmed his nails, cleaned dried food from his fingers, and placed his hand on the blanket. Denise had arrived 10 minutes before taking it. She posted, "Long night. Dad restless. Grateful for coffee and prayer. She had not stayed the night. I had." When I texted her, "You weren't here last night," she replied, "I meant emotionally long. Emotionally long." I stared at that message for a full minute before blocking her posts from my feed, but relatives still saw them. Aunt Marjorie called. "Denise is doing so much. You girls must be exhausted." I said yes. Cowardly, maybe, but I was too tired to correct every person fed by her performance. Then Dad had a bad episode in August. He woke at 2:12 in the morning, gasping, disoriented, trying to pull off his oxygen. I called hospice. Marianne came even though she was not the nurse on call, because she was nearby, and said, "I know Harold." We adjusted medication. Dad cried because he thought he was back on a Navy ship and couldn't find his boots. I held his shoulders and said, "You're home, Dad. You're home." He looked at me, terrified. "Patty?" No one had called me Patty since I was 13. "Yes." "Don't let me drown." "You're not drowning." "Promise?" "I promise." His breathing settled near dawn. Marianne sat with me in the kitchen at 5:30 while Dad slept. "You need help," she said. "I know." "Real help." "I know." "Where is Denise?" I looked at my coffee. "Sleeping, I assume." Marianne's mouth tightened. "I can document caregiver burden and request respite services." "She'll say I'm making her look bad." Marianne leaned forward. "Patricia, documentation is not an insult. It is a record." That sentence stayed with me. Documentation is not an insult, it is a record. I began keeping one. Not to punish Denise, to keep myself sane. Date: overnight care, medication changes, Denise visit times, hospice calls, supplies ordered, dad's symptoms, my work hours, missed meals, sleep, incidents. September 3rd. Denise arrived 1:15, left 2:05. Posted: spent afternoon with dad. Dad ate 3 spoonfuls soup. Pain at 6. Called hospice. September 10th. Denise canceled because migraine. Posted old photo with dad. Missing simpler days. I cleaned commode, changed sheets twice. September 21st. Dad agitated, called for mom. Denise sent text. Can you tell him I love him? I did. October 2nd. Denise visited with Aaron. Took photos. Dad, too tired. Marianne present. October 16th. Dad told Marianne, Patty does the hard things. I wrote that one down carefully. By October, Dad was mostly bedbound. The house changed around him. Hospital bed in the living room because he liked seeing the maple tree through the front window. Oxygen concentrator humming. Medication bottles lined on a tray. Disposable gloves. Barrier cream. Chuck's pads. A baby monitor on the kitchen counter. A notebook of doses. A bell he never used because he hated needing it. The pocket watch sat on the side table beside his bed. He asked for it often. Some days he could not remember why it mattered, only that it did. I would place it in his palm, and his thumb would move over the scratch on the back. Still ticking? He would ask. Yes? Good? Denise wanted the watch. She had mentioned it twice before he declined badly. Dad always said, I loved that watch, she told me. I looked at her. No, you always said you loved that watch. She laughed as if I were joking. I was not. In mid-October, she posted a photo of the pocket watch on Dad's blanket with the caption, Time feels so precious now. That photo received nearly 500 reactions. Dad had been asleep. The watch had not been hers to stage. I took it back after she left and placed it in the drawer beside me. 2 weeks before Dad died, he had one clear morning. People who have cared for the dying know what I mean. It comes like a strange break in weather. The confusion lifts, the eyes sharpen. The person you have been losing in fragments returns long enough to make leaving hurt twice. Marianne was there. So was I. Denise had canceled because she had a hair appointment she described as not movable, because the funeral could happen any time, and she needed to be prepared. Yes, she said that. Dad woke around 9, looked at me and said, Patty, where's my watch? I placed it in his hand. He smiled faintly. Your mother hated this thing. No, she didn't. She said it made me look like a train conductor. I laughed. Marianne smiled while checking his pulse. Dad looked at her. You're the nurse. Yes, Harold. You write things down? I do. He nodded slowly. Good. His eyes moved to me. She won't say. I leaned closer. What? She won't say what she did. I thought he meant Mom at first. Then he touched my hand. Patty won't. My throat tightened. Dad? He looked at Marianne. You write it. Patricia stayed. Denise came pretty. My breath caught. Marianne did not laugh. She said gently, Would you like me to write a note? Dad nodded. Not mean. No. Truth. Marianne looked at me. I could barely speak. Dad continued, words slow but clear. Denise loves noise. Patty does work. Both mine. But truth matters. Both mine. That broke me. Marianne took out a hospice notepad. Dad dictated in pieces. To my girls. Denise, I love you. You always brought color into a room. Patricia, you brought water, medicine, clean sheets, and peace. You did the hard things. I knew. Do not let anyone say I didn't know. Dad. He was exhausted after that. Marianne had him sign with a shaky H and witnessed it. She gave me a copy and kept one in her notes after asking his permission. Funeral, Dad whispered. I leaned closer. What about it? Don't fight. I won't. Truth? I know. He squeezed the watch. Give Patty. I shook my head. Dad, we don't need to talk about. Watch, he said, suddenly stern through the weakness. Patty. Marianne wrote that too. Dad died 13 days later at 3:17 in the morning. I was there. Of course I was there. The room was dark, except for the lamp near the sofa. The oxygen machine hummed. Rain tapped against the window. His breathing had changed hours earlier, that long pause between breaths that makes time feel like it is stretching itself thin. Marianne had prepared me. Still, nothing prepares you. I held his hand. I told him Mom was waiting. I told him Linda was waiting. I told him he had done enough. At 3:17, he exhaled and did not inhale again. The world did not stop. That felt offensive. The oxygen machine still hummed. The refrigerator still clicked. A car passed outside. My phone screen still showed the medication alarm I no longer needed. I called hospice. Then I called Denise. She answered groggy. Is he gone? Yes. She began sobbing so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I wasn't there, she cried. No, she was not. I did not say it. The funeral planning began immediately, because death gives you no time to be poetic. Denise wanted to handle, quote, quote, the tribute elements. I handled the body release, funeral home, death certificates, insurance notifications, obituary details, Navy flag request, cemetery coordination, pastor communication, and the clothing Dad would wear. Denise chose the slideshow music. She posted a black square online with the caption, "My father took his last breath this morning. I held him in my heart as he crossed over." In her heart, not in the room. People commented, "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I turned off my phone. At the funeral home, Denise cried over casket choices and said, quote, "I just want to honor him properly." I asked if she could call the florist. She said she could not talk to people without breaking down. I called the florist. She asked if she could give the eulogy. I should have said no, but Dad had said, "Don't fight." Truth. So I said, "You can speak." She said, "Do you want to say anything?" I looked at the funeral paperwork in my lap. No. She seemed relieved. Not concerned. Relieved. The morning of the funeral, I placed Dad's pocket watch in my purse. I wore a navy dress because black felt too formal for a man who once wore plaid shorts to a barbecue and called it summer elegance. I arrived early. Marianne came before the service and hugged me in the vestibule. "You slept?" she asked. "No." "After today, you rest." I nodded because pretending was easier. She looked at me carefully. "Do you have the note?" "Yes." "Do you want me to say anything if needed?" I frowned. "If needed?" She glanced toward the chapel, where Denise was greeting people with both hands around theirs, receiving sympathy like communion. "Harold asked for truth," Marianne said. I looked at my sister. "She'll just say something dramatic, and then it'll be over." Marianne did not answer. That is how I should have known. The service began beautifully. The pastor spoke of Dad's work, service, humor, stubbornness, and devotion to family. A Navy representative presented the flag. My cousin read Psalm 23. Aaron sang Amazing Grace with a trembling voice that made even the funeral director wipe his eyes. Then Denise rose to speak. At first, it was fine. She told a story about Dad teaching her to ride a bike. She described his laugh. She said he hated overcooked vegetables and loved old westerns. She cried, and I felt compassion despite everything because she had lost him too. Then she turned. "I moved through these last months in a way I never expected," she said. "Caregiving changes you. There were days I didn't know if I had strength left, but love gives you strength." My spine stiffened. Marianne, seated near the aisle, lowered her eyes. Denise continued. "I learned to give medication, to sit through long nights, to soothe fear, to put my own life aside. A hot, clean anger moved through me. Still, I stayed seated. Then she said, "I hope Dad knew that I was there for him until the end." That was when Marianne spoke. Patricia made him comfortable. The chapel turned. Denise froze. Marianne stepped forward, program in hand. I'm sorry, but Harold asked me to make sure the truth was not lost. The pastor looked startled, but did not stop her. Maybe because hospice nurses carry a kind of authority pastors recognize. Denise whispered, "This isn't appropriate." Marianne's voice remained calm. "No, taking credit for care you did not provide is not appropriate." A soft gasp moved through the pews. My face burned, not with shame, with the shock of someone saying aloud what I had swallowed for months. Denise gripped the pulpit. "I don't know what you think you know." Marianne looked at her with an expression I had seen her use when explaining to families that morphine did not mean murder. Patient, firm, unmovable. "I know the visit logs. I know the medication records. I know who answered hospice calls. I know who changed sheets at 3 a.m. I know who learned wound care. I know who slept in the recliner. I know who your father asked for when he was afraid." Every sentence landed quietly. No theatrical accusation. Just record. Documentation is not an insult. It is a record. Denise's eyes filled. "That doesn't mean I didn't love him." Marianne's face softened slightly. "No, it means love and labor are not the same." That sentence held the room. Love and labor are not the same. Marianne turned toward me. "Patricia, I apologize if I am overstepping." I shook my head because words had left me. Then she addressed the room. Harold Monroe was loved by both daughters. He knew that. He also knew who cared for him daily. He asked me to witness that truth. Denise stepped back from the microphone as if it had burned her. The pastor, recovering, said gently, "Perhaps Patricia would like to share anything from her father." I did not want to stand. My legs felt heavy, but Dad had asked. Truth. I stood, walked to the pulpit, and took the envelope from my purse. My hands shook as I opened it. I did not look at Denise. I looked at Dad's casket. "This is a note Dad dictated to Marianne 2 weeks before he died," I said. "He signed it. She witnessed it." The chapel was silent. I read, "To my girls. Denise, I love you. You always brought color into a room. Patricia, you brought water, medicine, clean sheets, and peace. You did the hard things. I knew. Do not let anyone say I didn't know, Dad." The words were simple, not poetic, not polished. Dad. When I finished, I folded the note and placed it back in the envelope. Then I said, "I loved caring for him. And I hated it. Both are true. I am grateful I could keep him home. And I am tired in places I do not yet know how to name. I don't want applause, I just don't want the truth buried with him." I stepped down. No one moved for a moment. Then Erin stood from the second row, walked to me, and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm sorry, Aunt Pat," she whispered. "That broke me more than anything else." I held her and cried for the first time in public. Not pretty tears, real ones. The service continued somehow. Funerals have momentum even after truth walks in and changes the air. The pastor prayed, we sang, the pallbearers came forward. Dad's casket moved down the aisle beneath the stained glass light. Denise did not finish her speech. At the graveside, she stood apart from me, face pale, eyes swollen. People avoided choosing sides openly, but truth had rearranged the room. Aunt Marjorie hugged me and whispered, "I didn't know." I said, "I know." My cousin Linda cried and said, "I should have called you more." "Yes," I said. She nodded. "I will." We would see. After the burial, there was a luncheon in the church hall. I wanted to go home. Instead, I went because Dad would have expected food after a funeral, and because I needed to collect the framed photos before Denise turned them into content. People approached me differently now. Not with generic sympathy, with recognition. Mr. Hanley, from Dad's old union, shook my hand with both of his. "Your father was proud of you," he said. I swallowed. "Thank you." A woman from Dad's church said, "I saw your sister's updates and thought she was there every day. I'm sorry." I nodded. "Thank you." Another person said, "You should have asked for help." I looked at her. I did. She had no answer. Good. Denise stayed near the coffee urn, surrounded by fewer people than she expected. Erin stood with me. That mattered. She did not attack her mother. She simply refused to leave me alone. Near the end of the luncheon, Denise approached me. Her makeup had faded. Her curls had collapsed slightly. She looked younger suddenly, and meaner and sadder. "You humiliated me," she said quietly. I looked at her. "No." "You let that nurse humiliate me." "No." "You read that note in front of everyone." Dad asked for truth. Her eyes flashed. "So now I'm the villain?" "You lied." "I gave a eulogy." "You gave yourself my months." She flinched. For a second, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she whispered, "You always have to be the martyr." I felt tired all the way through my bones. "No, Denise, I was the caregiver. You made me the martyr by taking the credit." She looked away. "I loved him too." "I know. You act like I didn't." "No, I act like visiting for photos is not the same as changing his bedding." Her mouth trembled. I couldn't handle it. That was the first honest thing she had said. I softened slightly. "I know. I couldn't see him like that. I know. It destroyed me." "No," I said gently. "It inconvenienced the version of love you wanted to perform." Her face hardened again. "That is cruel. It is exact." She walked away. I did not follow. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever done the real caregiving while someone else collected the public sympathy, you know exactly what that funeral felt like. It was not about wanting praise. It was about refusing to let your exhaustion be rewritten by someone who was not there. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me who actually showed up when the hard work began. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. The aftermath came in layers. First, social media. Denise deleted 3 posts. Not all. Just the ones that said things too easily disproven by Marianne's records. Then she posted a new one, 2 days after the funeral. "Grief is complicated. Families all experience loss differently. I am choosing peace. Choosing peace." I stared at it for a while, then closed the app. Erin called me that night. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't have to apologize for your mother." "I know. I'm apologizing for me." I sat in Dad's living room, still surrounded by borrowed chairs and leftover funeral flowers. For what? For believing her posts. For not coming more. For not asking you what you needed. I closed my eyes. "You're young." "I'm 22. "Yes. That's old enough to notice." "That was true," she continued. "Can I come help pack Grandpa's things?" "Yes." She came the next day with cardboard boxes, labels, and sandwiches. We packed slowly. Not like a clean-out, like a conversation. Dad's sweaters. His navy cap. His old work boots. His books. The pill crusher. The unopened pack of bed pads. The oxygen company paperwork. Hospice folders. A half-used bottle of lotion. The baby monitor. Erin held the pocket watch case. "Mom wants this," she said quietly. "I know." "Grandpa gave it to you?" "Yes." "Good." That single word meant more than she knew. The legal part of Dad's estate was simple, because he had made it so. The house would be sold, proceeds divided between Denise and me after expenses. Personal items were listed in a memorandum. Pocket watch to Patricia, Mom's wedding ring to Denise, Navy flag to both daughters to decide together, tools to Erin if she wanted them, tomato seeds to the community garden, because Dad had jokes even in estate planning. Denise objected to the pocket watch. Of course she did. At the attorney's office, she said, Dad was not in his right mind. The attorney, Mr. Clayton, looked over his glasses. The memorandum was updated 18 months before his final illness and reaffirmed in the hospice note witnessed by Nurse Cooper. Denise's mouth tightened. "I just think it's unfair." I looked at her. "What part?" "That you get the watch and the sympathy." There it was. Not the watch, the sympathy. I leaned back. "Denise, I would trade all sympathy for one ordinary Sunday dinner with Dad healthy enough to complain about the tomatoes." She cried then. For once, I believed the tears came from grief instead of performance. But belief did not mean surrender. The watch came home with me. I placed it on my bookshelf beside a framed photo of Dad holding a tomato the size of his fist and looking absurdly proud. For weeks after the funeral, I did not know what to do with myself. Caregiving had taken over my life so completely that its absence felt like a job loss, a breakup, and a collapse all at once. I woke at 2 in the morning, certain I had missed a medication dose. I reached for the baby monitor that was no longer on my nightstand. I heard oxygen and the hum of my refrigerator. I stood in grocery aisles, unable to remember what I liked to eat because I had spent months buying what Dad could swallow. People said, "Now you can rest." They meant well. They did not understand that rest after caregiving can feel like falling. Marianne called 1 week after the funeral. Not as a nurse. As Marianne. "How are you?" she asked. I almost said fine. Then I remembered who she was. "I don't know." That is a truthful answer. "I feel empty." That happens. "I'm angry." That happens too. I miss him, but I also miss the routine, which makes me feel awful because the routine was terrible. Also normal. I laughed weakly. You have a list for everything. I have seen grief wear many costumes. She paused. Are you eating? Sometimes. Sleeping? Badly. Do you have support? I thought of Erin, Tessa from work, my cousin Linda trying. The church ladies who sent casseroles but did not know what to say, Denise posting about peace. Some. Take more, Marianne said. That became my recovery instruction. Take more. Not give more. Take more. I took a month of caregiver leave from work, then returned gradually. My supervisor, Janice, hugged me and said, "We survived without you, but we're glad you're back." That sentence helped. Survived without you. For 7 months, everyone had depended on me surviving for them. It was strange and healing to know my workplace could function without turning my absence into betrayal. Denise and I barely spoke for 2 months. Then Christmas approached. Dad's house had not sold yet. It sat quiet, staged awkwardly by the realtor, with neutral throw pillows on the couch where Dad had died. That bothered me more than I expected. Denise wanted to host Christmas at her apartment to start fresh. I said I was not ready for fresh. Erin suggested we meet at a restaurant. We did. It was uncomfortable. Denise gave me a wrapped gift after dessert. I did not want to open it. Inside was a framed photo of Dad and me, not one I had seen before. He was in the hospital bed in the living room, asleep. I was sitting beside him, head tilted back against the chair, asleep too, one hand resting near his blanket. The photo was not flattering. My hair was messy, my face looked exhausted. There were medication bottles on the table. The lighting was dim, but the photo was honest. Denise said quietly, "I took it in October." I looked at her. "You never posted it." She shook her head. "No." "Why?" Her eyes filled. Because I looked at it and knew it wasn't my story. That was the closest thing to an apology I had received from her. I waited. She continued. I was jealous. I did not expect that. Of what? That he needed you. I stared at her. He needed care. I know, but he trusted you with things he didn't trust me with. Because I was there. She nodded, crying silently. I know that now. The restaurant noise moved around us. Forks, laughter, a child whining near the hostess stand. Ordinary life continuing while old family truths changed shape. Denise said, "I'm sorry I took credit." I waited. "I'm sorry I posted like I was doing the work. I'm sorry I made people think I was there at night when I wasn't. I'm sorry for the speech. I'm sorry I called you a martyr." Specific. Finally. My throat tightened. Thank you. I don't know how to fix it. You can start by correcting people when they say it. She nodded. I will. And to my surprise, she did. Not perfectly, but she did. When Aunt Marjorie commented on a later post, "You girls took such good care of Harold," Denise replied publicly, "Patricia carried most of Dad's daily care. I visited when I could, but she was the one there. Dad knew it, and I'm grateful." I screenshotted it. Not out of pettiness, out of astonishment. She also wrote a longer post, in January, one I did not ask for. I have learned something hard about caregiving and honesty. Love is not measured by captions. My sister Patricia did the daily, difficult care for our father. I loved him deeply, but I did not carry what she carried. I am grateful to her, and I am sorry for ways I made grief about how I appeared instead of what Dad needed. The post received fewer reactions than her dramatic ones. Truth is less viral. But it mattered. Dad's house sold in March. Packing the final boxes nearly broke me. The tomatoes had not yet gone into the ground. The garage smelled like dust and old tools. The kitchen wallpaper curled near the sink. The pantry still had Mom's handwriting on a label that said flour, though the container had held rice for years because nobody had changed it after she died. Erin came to help. Denise came too. She worked quietly, without taking photos. At one point, we found Dad's gardening gloves in the shed. Denise held them for a long time. "I don't know what to do with these," she said. "Keep them if you want." She shook her head. "No, you should." I looked at her. "Why?" "Because you'll plant something." She was right. I took them. That spring, I planted tomatoes in containers on my townhouse patio. I had no idea what I was doing, despite years of Dad trying to teach me. I overwatered 2 plants and underwatered 1. One produced exactly 3 tomatoes, all ugly. I brought the first one inside, placed it beside Dad's pocket watch, and cried because grief is ridiculous and holy and sometimes shaped like a lopsided tomato. Marianne stopped by in July with a card. She had been in the neighborhood and asked if she could visit. We sat on the patio with iced tea. The tomato plants looked embarrassingly dramatic by then. "You're doing well," she said. "Am I?" "You are living." That feels generous. It is accurate. I smiled. "Do you ever regret speaking at the funeral?" "No. That was brave." She shook her head. "It was nursing." I laughed. She continued. "Families often tell stories at the end that protect the living from discomfort. Your father did not ask me to shame Denise. He asked me not to let you be erased." I looked down at my hands. I didn't know how much I needed that until you said it. "I know." Before leaving, Marianne handed me a copy of Dad's hospice care summary. "I thought you might want this someday. Not all the clinical details, just the caregiver record." I opened it after she left. Primary caregiver, Patricia Monroe. Family support, intermittent visits by Denise Monroe. Patient expressed comfort with Patricia present. Patient requested acknowledgement of Patricia's care. There it was, not emotion, record. I placed it in a folder with Dad's note, the funeral program, Denise's apology post, and a photo of the pocket watch. Some people inherit jewelry, houses, money, china. I inherited documentation that I was not invisible. That may sound sad. It is not. It is proof. A year after Dad died, Denise and I went to the cemetery together. Not on the anniversary exactly. A week after. We both admitted the actual day felt too heavy. We brought flowers. Yellow mums from me. White roses from her. Dad would have said the roses were overpriced, and the mums looked cheerful enough to forgive us. We stood between Mom and Dad's graves. Denise said, "I miss being able to perform grief before I understood it." I looked at her. That is a strange sentence. I know, but it's true. Performing it was easier. Yes. Living it is quieter. Yes. She wiped her eyes. I still want people to think well of me. I know. I'm trying to care more about being honest. That's better. She nodded. After a while, she said, "You were a good daughter." I watched the wind move through the grass. "So were you, in some ways." She looked at me, surprised. I meant it. Denise had failed in ways that mattered, but she had also made Dad laugh when he was younger. She brought color, as he said. She remembered his favorite candy. She could make him smile with ridiculous stories when the room felt too heavy. Love does not become false because it was incomplete. But incomplete love should not claim complete labor. That is the lesson. The final truth is this. Caregiving is not a caption. It is not a candle emoji. It is not a soft focus photo of a hand. It is medication alarms, laundry, fear, resentment, tenderness, paperwork, sore backs, interrupted sleep, unwashed hair, whispered prayers, adult diapers, pharmacy receipts, hospice notes, and the strange privilege of helping someone leave the world without letting them feel abandoned. My sister took credit for caring for Dad. The hospice nurse corrected her at the funeral. And when Marianne spoke when Dad's note was read, when the room finally understood that the quiet daughter had not been cold or clinical or simply good with details, the truth did not destroy the funeral. It honored him. Because my father did know. He knew who brought water, he knew who brought medicine, he knew who brought clean sheets, he knew who brought peace. And in the end, that was enough. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been the caregiver no one saw while someone else posted the grief, accepted the praise, or rewrote the history. If Patricia's story reached you, I hope you remember that the work you did mattered, even if no one applauded it at the time. The person you cared for may not have had the words every day, but love often knows who stayed. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the truth that finally reaches the room. So tell me, if your sister took credit for months of caring for your dying father while you did the real hospice work, would you correct her yourself at the funeral? Or would you let the nurse who saw everything tell the truth?